Good morning, darlings. I wanted to talk to you today about the prince. We already had a little bit about the prince when we looked at the prologue, and we were talking about the fact that he was a fair ruler, he was firm but fair, and that it was his job to keep the law in Verona. So now what we're going to do today is we're going to look at the last bit of the first scene, which is his long speech. Now, it says, so we'll have a quick read through, so follow along, and then we'll go from there. So the prince says, rebellious subjects, enemies to peace, profaners of this neighbour-stained steel, will they not hear? What ho, you men, you beasts, that quench the fire of your pernicious rage, with purple fountains issuing from your veins. On pain of torture, from those bloody hands, throw your mistempered weapons to the ground, and hear the sentence of your moved prince. 3 civil brawls, bred of an airy word, by thee, old Capulet, and Montague, have thrice disturbed the quiet of our streets, and made Verona's ancient citizens cast by their grave beseeming and ornaments to wield old partisans in hands as old, cankered with peace, to part your cankered hate. If ever you disturb our streets again, your lives shall pay the forfeit of the peace. For this time, all the rest depart away. You, Capulet, shall go along with me, and Montague, come you this afternoon, to know our further pleasure in this case. To old Freetown, our common judgment place. Once more, on pain of death, all men depart. So if you hadn't any clue what all of this meant, if you hadn't got a clue and you were just being presented with this for the first time, then you probably need to be looking for key words. This is how I might approach it. If I'd never read this before, if I didn't know exactly what he was saying, I might approach it in the way that I'd be looking for key words to try and get an idea of the tone of the section. So the first word he starts with is rebellious. And if somebody is rebellious, it means they go against the law. So they are unlawful here. So this is what they're rebelling against. They're rebelling against the law. Subjects here means they are, they're not above him. They're not above the law. They're supposed to know their place. Yes, they may be lords and ladies and noble men and women. However, they're supposed to know their place. And this bit here, enemies to peace, is key. Peace here is his priority. So let's write that down, priority. And you'll have to forgive my writing on this again because I'm still not great with it. So that's supposed to be a T and that's supposed to be a Y. So it's his priority to keep the peace. He is a fair prince. This is fair Verona. We want it to not only be nice, but we want it to be a fair place where people can go about their daily lives and not have to worry about a tyrant ruling them. And if you don't know what a tyrant is, it's somebody who rules with an iron fist and what they say goes, much like me in my classroom. But, no, joking, obviously. They are somebody who rules with it. You usually get them in dictatorships and stuff like that. But this is a fair city. This is a fair city. He's a fair ruler. They've got fair laws. Okay, sorry about that little pop-up. Somebody was messaging me. I actually have friends. Woohoo. So, rebellious subjects, enemies to peace, profaners of this neighbour-stained steel. Will they not hear? So here we've got, let me just change colour for a second. Here we've got, will they not hear? And I think you are going to tell me, if I were to ask you, why am I circling this? You'd say, Miss, that's a rhetorical question. Because who in their right mind is going to answer the prince back? Because he's using words like rebellious subjects. He's calling them rebels. He's saying that they're enemies to peace. He's saying, will they not hear? And then he says, what ho, you men, you beasts. Now, a beast is another word for an animal. So they're behaving like in animals. And I'm fairly certain, even if I hadn't read all this before now, that I would know that that is an insult, and that means that he is unhappy with their behaviour. Quite rightly so. Now, the rest of this is really quite challenging if you're not, oh dear, I've pressed the wrong button. If you're not overly familiar with Shakespearean languages, if this is your first adventure into Shakespearean language, then it could be that you are looking at this and thinking, oh gosh, oh no, this is too much for me. However, if you were to go to No Fear Shakespeare, the link I put in the last video, and I'll put the link again to this particular section in the description box, but I have grabbed it for you here just so that you know, and I've put it in purple so it's a nice purple. So the prince shouting at the rioters, you rebels, enemies of the peace, men who turn their weapons against their own neighbours, they won't listen to me. You there, you men, you beasts who satisfy your anger with the fountains of each other's blood. Now, we need to find, if you were going to use this to help you decode Shakespeare's language, this early modern English that Shakespeare is written in, then you could help, you find a key word here and you change it, you don't change, you spot it in the other version. And so purple fountains, that's what we want there, purple fountains. That's the same bit, that's the same word. So we'll know that that's where we are in the speeches, because sometimes these things get mixed up on different lines. But you can go through this and you can look at this in more detail to make sure that you're understanding all of the subtext and the nuances and all the metaphors and similes and everything that Shakespeare is using. You can really analyse this. This is a great speech to analyse Shakespeare's methods, to look at the bystander's point of view. If you were, say, you can then empathise, for example, with a member of Verona's city, with a normal, everyday member of the people of Verona in this play. So, that quench your fire or pernicious rage with purple fountains issuing from your veins. On pain of torture from those bloody hands, throw your mistempered weapons to the ground. So this is an instruction. And he's saying, if you do not drop your swords right now, you will be tortured. Now, don't forget, in the olden days, well, we call the olden days, but back then, they knew how to torture people. They weren't messing about. They had some pretty sophisticated, well, not sophisticated, but effective torture methods. And if you want to look them up, you can. However, I don't suggest that you look up too many because you might have nightmares. But torture here would not be a foreign concept for the audience. And I'm fairly certain in the town that Shakespeare created, his version of Verona, that the members of both families and the bystanders, the normal citizens of the town, I'm fairly certain they knew what torture was as well. So let's have a look. I'll have you tortured if you don't put down your swords and listen to your angry prince. Now, don't forget, because this is an area of Italy and not the whole thing, he's a prince. He's not a king, he's a prince. Much like when we did My Last Duchess, the Duke of Ferrara, he was in charge of his little area. This prince, is in charge of Verona. Okay, so throw your mistempered weapons to the ground and hear the sentence of your moved prince. So here, the word moved or moved, we'd say moved today, but there they used to say moved prince. I am so angry, you need to hear the sentence. Now, sentence here can mean two things. When we think of the word sentence, we mean a group of words put together that means something and makes sense. However, it can also mean the punishment you get for breaking the law. The man was sentenced to life imprisonment for killing a person, something like that, or he was sentenced to 6 months in prison for stealing a pack of Rolos or whatever it is. Yeah, ooh, Rolos. Right. So here then, Shakespeare this is a double meaning. This is what I mean by subtext. So hear the sentence of your moved prince. Not only are you going to listen to what I have to say, but you are going to find out your punishment as well. So this is what we mean by a subtext, So you probably want to take a few notes here. And if you need to pause the video and do so as you're going along, that is absolutely fine. So there's a full stop there. And then he carries on and says, 3 civil brawls, bred of an airy word, by thee, old Capulet and Montague, have thrice disturbed the quiet of our streets. He is not happy. And why would he be? Why would he be happy? What's gone on? What do we know? Because he's told us that we didn't know before. Well, let's have a look and break this down, shall we? So, 3 civil brawls. So there have been 3 civil brawls. Now this links to the prologue in terms of civil. So we were talking about, if we go back a couple of slides, we can have a look at the word civil. We were talking about the fact that civil should be that you're polite, you're kind, you're courteous. However, if we think of civil war, it means contained within a country. And here, this civil brawl here can mean contained within the town of Verona. So, 3 civil brawls bred of an airy word by thee, old Capulet and Montague. And he is blaming them both here, isn't he? And he's not saying it's one or the other that's more to blame. He's saying you've both done it. You, old Capulet and Montague, have thrice, so not once, not twice, but thrice disturbed the quiet of our streets. And I really cannot write properly with this pen. Sorry, guys. Have thrice disturbed the quiet of our streets. You've done this 3 times now. You've done it times. 3 times now, riots have broken out in this city, and all because of a casual word from you, old Capulet and Montague. 3 times the peace. See, again, he's preoccupied with the idea of peace, because that's his job. His job is to maintain the peace. 3 times the peace has been disturbed in our streets. If he was, say, for example, a modern person, he might follow that phrase with, how very dare you? So if we weren't sure how to decode all of these complicated words, we would look for key phrases like this. We would look for have thrice disturbed the quiet of our streets. In no way is he championing this endeavour. He is criticising it. He is saying, you've done this 3 times. Now, there is an American turn of phrase that comes from baseball that says 3 strikes and you are out, which means that you don't get to partake anymore. So this is what he's essentially saying. You've done this 3 times. And if you're not careful, see down here he says, if you ever do this, so this will be the out in the 3 strikes if you're out. If you ever disturb our streets again, your lives shall pay the forfeit of the peace. This means he's going to sentence them to death. Let me just write properly. Sorry, guys. He's going to sentence them to death. It is going to be a death sentence because who's died? Well, quite a few people. There's been a couple of people have died, and, this is going to get serious. People are going to die if they cannot keep themselves civil, polite, and respectful of the laws. How dare they? How dare they? Even, he says this bit here, he says, even other people in the town, other citizens have had to take off their good dresses to stop you from fighting. Old cankered with peace to part your cankered hate. Now if you don't know what that means, let's have a look on the other side. So it says, 3 times the peace has been disturbed in our streets, and Verona's old citizens have had to take off their dress clothes and pick up rusty spears to part you. So their hands then, their old hands are cankered with peace. So if you don't know what a canker is, sometimes you'll hear canker sore. It's a bit like a blister. So here their hands are blistered to try and keep the peace because Montague and Capulet are cankered because they have cankered hate. They have this blister, this ulcer, this something that's breaking them down from being decent human beings, decent, polite, civil, respectable human beings, into squabbling animals. Don't forget, he called them beasts up here earlier. So he's so angry that he says, right, everybody leave. You, Capulet, because you can't have them in the same room at the same time, and he's clearly quite angry. He says, you, Capulet, you shall come with me, because Benvolio's just told the prince about who started it. And so he, like us perhaps on the last slide that we did on the last video, we perhaps think that maybe the Capulets are worse because they're the ones who started calling all the names. So maybe he's going to deal with Capulet first. But Montague isn't innocent in all of this. He's not resisted fighting. Their family took their swords down to the town and had a big battle, a big sword fight as well. They didn't turn the other cheek. They didn't just stay in their house behind their big castle walls and let the Capulets get into trouble by themselves. No. They reacted too. So, and you guys know this. You've seen people at school who have got into trouble for reacting to something, whereas if they just walked away, only one person would be in trouble and it wouldn't be them. So this is a lesson for us as well from Shakespeare. It's a bit of a lesson. So, and then he says, once more, on pain of death, all men depart. He says, if you stay around, you will be given a death sentence too. So from this, we can probably ascertain his mood here. So let's have a look at your task. Your task then is to answer this question. You can do this in your books, you can take photos or you can type it up and send it to me. What is the prince's reaction to the conflict between the two families? Tell me why he feels this way. So as usual, by answering the questions underneath, you'll have answered the questions at the top. So why does he feel this way? So we have to identify what he feels and why. And we need quotes to support our answer from across here. What are we, the audience, supposed to infer? So he's implying, we infer, so we have to work out. That's what infer means. From his speech about the duration of the conflict. Duration there means how long it's lasted, in case you didn't know. And then what are we, the audience, supposed to think about his warning to the two families, and why are we supposed to think that? Do we think he's taking it seriously? Do we think he means it? Do we think he's just had enough? What do we think? So by answering these questions here, you will have already answered this one at the top. You do remember to make sure that you're analysing your methods, please. If he's used any sibilants, if he's used any repetition, any metaphors, all of these things I'm mentioning will probably help you in your paragraph. And I'm sure those of you who are listening to this who've been in my classroom long enough will know that that means it will help you, because you can probably see me in your mind's eye nodding along. And I am. Tragic. So by answering these here, you will be looking for metaphors. You'll be looking for some sibilants, maybe, a few different methods to be able to answer this question over here. As usual, if you need anything, you can tweet me at Miss Hine English. You can email me, and you can write this in your books. You can check No Fear Shakespeare, this bit here. For help if you need to. You can take a photo and send it to me, or you can type it up and stick it in the submissions folder. Okay, as usual, I expect you to work hard. I expect you to explain all your ideas. I expect you to wash your hands with soap. I expect you to stay indoors, and I expect you to stay safe. I miss you all. Take care. See you next time.